This episode, we will be discussing how to actually afford to travel multiple times a year. Welcome to Solo Sunday Stories. Thank you all for bearing with me this past week with the intermission in the middle of the series. I truly appreciate it. This is episode 5. So in this episode, we will be discussing how to actually afford to travel multiple times a year. So for me, when I first started traveling, I was traveling 4 times a year. So I broke it up in quarters so that I could be mindful of my trip planning. Also, when I first started, the first job I had, which was in technology, it was for a school, but I was working in tech. We had, I believe, 20 to 25 days of PTO, and that didn't include sick days, and it didn't include holidays. So, like, we had a lot of time. So I utilized that privilege to my advantage. And I know not a lot of people have that privilege of having that much PTO in their jobs, but I do want to discuss in this episode how to maneuver in the financial and time constraints that you may have, so that you can be strategic, so that you'll be able to travel more. So for me, it was, all of those things that I was afforded in that job, but also I told my colleagues, like, I work just to pay bills and travel the world. Like, that was my priority. And it still rings true even though I'm older now. But, as adults, life and priorities shift. But that is still the main premise because I love to travel. So it is a high priority in my life, even if I have to shift things around. So for me, I was working full time, working in technology, as I said. And again, I had all of this extra PTO, and I don't have any kids, so I had a lot of flexibility when it came to travel. So we'll get into numbers and strategies. So the first thing I want to say, before we get into anything, my mindset is that I worked just to pay bills and travel. And I think that is important because you have to have a mindset shift when it comes to travel being a priority for you, whether or not it's one time a year or multiple times a year. You need to build that into what is important to you. So travel becomes a priority and not just a luxury that if you have extra money that you'll do it, in case it happens, or in case I come into a windfall of money, or any number of things. Your shift needs to be that travel is a priority and not like an afterthought. And for me, it was a priority. So you have to make travel a priority so that it becomes something that you save for consistently and is non-negotiable. And I feel like that allows you to realize that it's really, really accessible and not as expensive. And I'll break down some numbers because I know it feels like jarring when you see people online and they're going on these extravagant trips and they're in these beautiful hotels and doing all of these cool activities. It is still accessible. It may not be in the same degree as people traveling online, because sometimes these people are getting comped hotels and doing activities. So it's sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it is not all out of pocket costs for the people that you see online sharing all of these things. So there's that. Also, when it comes to saving, you also have to think about, what am I not going to spend money on to sacrifice, for this travel budget annually? Because I know for me, I was still, because I was single, I had the option to save for travel, pay for my bills, and then still have money to do all of the things that I wanted to do in between time. So that was, again, a privilege for me, and that may not be the case for everyone. But again, you have to figure out what sacrifices are you going to make in order to be able to put money into a savings for travel? And I would say start at the top of the year fresh, so that you have that momentum. I'm not saying like new year, new plans and all that stuff, but I feel like when you start fresh week 1, and that also depends on pay periods, but like starting off at week 1, you can say, okay, I'm going to start saving money from the top of the year to the end of the year for all 52 weeks of the year. And that's usually a good strategy. Or you can start at any point and just start putting money away. And also realize that your budget specifically may have trade-offs. Like some things you might not be able to say at the most luxurious hotel, or do the most expensive activities, or be in premium economy, or in business class, or first class. You have trade-offs, so you have to figure out what works within your budget and what you are able to do without in order to still have the travel experience that you want. So for booking strategies, so international travel, I recommend usually, and this was my rule of thumb, but that was because I was traveling quarterly, to book your travel 2 to 3 months before you go. And I think that's still the recommendation online if you like research it. And even so, you can do it even further, 6 months maybe, or whatever works. When you figure out where you're going, you can begin tracking those types of things. And then if you're going anywhere domestic, or like not too far, because domestic could still be international, well, technically not, but so when booking flights, I would say 2 to 3 months. That kind of worked for me because I was traveling quarterly. So it just kind of became the strategy for me. But I think that is something that is recommended online. And if you are trying to like absolutely get ahead, book whenever you feel comfortable booking. And then that's for international. And then like domestic, you can do like 1 to 2 months prior to travel for flights. And the good thing about flights is that now there's a lot of trackers. So Google Flights has a tracker, so you can track flights when the flight prices go down, and you can book it for the dates. Like you can actually have an alert for when you are going to travel, and then as soon as that price goes down for that range for that flight, you can book it. So that is a strategy that you can utilize. I use Going, and I've been using Going for quite some time. Back when it was like before the rebrand, when it was Scott's Cheap Flights. Basically, that allows it. Also, their team also works, I believe, with Google Tracker, where they're able to curate my list of destinations for when I want to travel or where I want to travel, and like they'll send me alerts for those specific destinations. But that's a paid service. Also, this is not sponsored, but that's a paid service, and you don't actually have to do that. Just use Google Flights and then do an alert, and then you should be straight to track your flights. Also, Skyscanner works. Kayak, I love Kayak. And then I know Skiplagged, but people use Skiplagged, but I know that there's like issues surrounding Skiplagged, but that's also an option. Then when it comes to booking everything, once you get the alert for your flights, I recommend booking directly with the airline. Over the years, even as me, being a travel agent and occasionally booking travel, third party, especially for my personal trips, but third party booking, I feel like is an additional hassle that I don't want to deal with. So I absolutely book directly with airlines. When I was flying to Mexico City, I was flying Aeromexico and I booked with them. And when I went to Portugal, I booked directly with TAP Portugal. So it like there's trade-offs with that too. So if you are able to get a deal using a third-party software, a third-party vendor, I would say do it. And just ensure that you add travel insurance. That's also, as I've gotten older, travel insurance is non-negotiable. Just add it to your flights just in case anything happens, so you have that additional safety net. Okay, so real flight examples. So for the vacations that I was just talking about, so Porto, that was a one-way flight, $560, and I was in London for 3 weeks earlier in the year. So I did a one-way flight because I knew I was going to be going to different cities and I wanted to track the flight prices. And then I flew into London for $650, and that ended up being from, I believe that was round trip, for getting there and then going home. So, and you know how you have to, that's like a multi-leg type of flight situation, because it's not like round trip that I'm going from Portugal to London and back to Portugal. I was going from Portugal to London and from London back to New York City. So that was $650. And then in June, when I went to Mexico City, my flight to Mexico City was $255. That was one way. And then I believe the flight coming back was $260. So that was the breakdown for the cost of flights, which is not really, really expensive. And then when you're thinking about accommodations, I would say I'm not 100%, especially if since this is a solo travel series, please be cautious when you are staying in Airbnbs, obviously, but it's a mix. If I'm staying with other people, Airbnb could be on the table, but if I'm solo, I usually stray from Airbnb and I stay in hotels. But with your accommodations, I would say it can be a mix of Airbnb, hotels. I was staying in co-living spaces in Portugal, and then I ended up staying in a hotel in London. And then Mexico City, I was in a co-living space because I've been trying to use Outsite. I'll probably talk about that in a separate video, but they're a co-living space that I've been using. And my budget in all of that was about, usually this is my budget when it comes to like hotels, it's like $120 to $150 a night is usually my range. And I think when I was in London, it was 91 pounds, so that's like 100 and something American. So that kind of falls within my range. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, but that's usually like deals. But I don't do really budget hotels. I'm not a fan. But again, if you are okay with budget hotels, then do what you would want to do to customize your trip. And then also, when you are thinking about all of these things, you have to prioritize whether or not location is more important or amenities in the hotel are more important. Because I feel like if you are prioritizing like location, like I need to be in the city center and they might have deals, and you are going to like skimp on the comforts that you would usually get if you just like were picking for amenities and things that you like within the hotel, there's trade-offs there, so you can customize it in that way. And then sometimes you can get deals that way for city centers, because obviously hotels are competing for people to stay at their accommodation, so they usually have deals in city centers or like main tourist like hubs. And then like for me, amenities are important. My main which is it's funny because my main thing about hotels, I need the sheets to be like the softest sheets ever. I've stayed in hotels where you lay down and you're just like, why does it feel like I'm gonna rub my skin off type of vibes. So those things are important, like certain amenities, like having the gym, like having a spa in the hotel. You know, breakfast is a priority for me. It might not be a priority for everyone else, but that is a non-negotiable for me when I am traveling. I make sure that if breakfast is not included in the price, that I book whatever reservation or like price range that includes breakfast as part of that package. Honestly, waking up and worrying about breakfast, I'm totally not a fan of having to worry about breakfast. And I feel like that, unless I'm going to brunch, breakfast is the most basic, like, part of, you know, the whole trip. Because, like, what there's I'm not even gonna say that there's not restaurants that they have like dope you know, breakfast items and like that's their jam, and they're like, I'm doing egg this and, you know, bacon, egg and cheese and all of these. That's cool but that's probably like a one-off thing. Like, I will go to that restaurant to try that breakfast item, but for the most part, I'm trying to reduce how much I have to think about in the morning when I wake up. I want to be able to just like wake up, get myself together, and then go downstairs to the breakfast bar, eat my food, and then start my day without having to think about it. Because I feel like lunch and dinner, those are the meals that like the chefs can show out for. So I make sure that I don't add like entire food packages so that I'm eating in the hotel or in wherever accommodations I'm in, because I'm going to be out going for lunch and dinner. So for the financial system, I have a dedicated travel savings account. I use Capital. I've been using Capital forever. And basically it is, you know, you set goals and then you transfer money into those separate goals. And then once you meet the goal, you can then like cash out on, you know, your goal. And that's what I used to utilize. As of late, I've already cashed out of my travel fund, but because I'm not going anywhere else this year, but that's what I use. I'll insert a screen grab of Capital, and I've been using it forever. There's a whole bunch of different apps that allow for you to save towards goals. If your bank has the option to save towards goals, absolutely utilize it, because then you can streamline how you save for things. And then also, if you want to save for other things outside of just travel, you have that option to do so that you have it separate from your main bank account. And that was my main reason as to why I got Capital, so I can keep my banking separate. So I was auto transferring about $250 every time I got paid, so that was twice a month. So for the month, it was about $500. So in total for the entire year, it was about $6,000. So that was reasonable, and I'll break out how that kind of works out with my travel. Also, you can use credit cards to get the points, but only if you have a travel card. And if you don't have a travel card, if your credit card has a good point system for travel. If not, do without, or try to enroll with a card that actually has great travel benefits and points so that you can gain that for future travel. But again, remember, don't put yourself in debt unnecessarily with a credit card, or you can just designate that credit card for travel and that's it. So for my breakdown of my 2025 travel, this is also just to preface the numbers. The first set of numbers I'm going to give is the airfare and accommodations. So in Porto, I spent $1,550, so $1,550. In Mexico City, I spent $1,245. In London, I spent $1,369. And then I took a side trip while I was in Europe, and I went to Madrid, which was $400. In total, with just airfare and accommodations, that was $4,514. And you see that falls within my $6,000 range of my savings. With activities, this is estimated because I didn't actually do the breakdown. The estimated activities was about $1,200, which puts me at about 5,700 and some change. And again, that's still within my $6,000. And that is just the basics. This, and also just to be transparent, this was me using a co-living space, so I was getting specials, and of course those deals are because I'm going to be in that location for long periods of time, and it was off peak. It was like, yeah, it was off peak for Porto, so I got a special on that. I also got a special when it was Mexico City, which was fine with me. It was, I think, rainy, but it was still nice. But I got deals on that. Mexico City was a booking for 30 days. In Porto, it was 2 weeks. London was, I want to say, 4 or 5 days, and that was the price for the 5 days plus the airfare. So it was like a even split between the airfare and the hotel. So for instance, for me, and just income context, I am in technology, and I've been in technology for over 10 years, so my salary is pretty decent to be able to have an additional $6,000 just like separated outside of my primary bills to be able to accommodate travel. But this is my budget. You can scale this down to $200 a month, and then you end up being with $2,400 a year, and you can probably take 1 to 2 trips a year. So you see how my number you can have that, and then you still have enough money saved to go on a vacation. Like every trip, obviously you see my trips, every trip for me was less than $2,000 because it wasn't the priority for, even though I spent money on activities, the priority for me was the experience. It wasn't me luxury traveling. Not this year. That wasn't the whole premise for me traveling this year, was to get out and just get reacclimated to traveling after not doing it for a long time, and just being able to move in these cities as a tourist for longer periods of time and like slow travel. So I wasn't like blowing the bank to be in the bestest places doing the greatest things. It was me being mellow and enjoying travel. And then while traveling, I didn't have to, while being in Porto and Mexico City, I did not have to eat out as much as I wanted because my accommodations had a kitchenette, and I specifically purchased the kitchenette accommodation so that I would be able to make my food when I didn't want to eat out, because I was going to be there for longer periods of time. Because I don't know about y'all, but Uber Eats, or eating lunch and dinner every night for 2 weeks or a whole month, it gets expensive very quickly. So I was going grocery shopping instead, and I was actually cooking my main meals in the accommodation in my kitchen, and then I still ate out, so that was also part of my budget. And I don't think I included food as part of this, which probably is a whole different thing. But again, I still had an additional about $500. I probably blew through that because I was eating Uber Eats. Yeah, we'll not get into that, but you think about it. So when you're traveling, eat local food. You don't have to, blow the bank, but that also gives you an authentic experience what the locals eat, and most times it's really enjoyable, and it's not like ultra expensive. So that's a way to also save money. Again, for me, that was the groceries and cooking myself. And then of course you have to splurge and go to restaurants, so you build that into your budget as well. And then transportation, I was in Ubers in Europe, and I don't know about anyone if you've ever been to Europe. Depending on where you are, Ubers are not very expensive. In the city, I can probably go like 10 blocks and Uber's like $30. But I went from, I want to say, from the airport in Porto to my accommodations, and it probably cost me $8. And that's the euro conversion to USD. So when you are in places where Ubers are a little bit more affordable, you can utilize Uber. I utilize Uber. I walk and I get on the bus or the trains in places because I want to experience a city for the city, and that's also a way to save money, and also you get to see all the things that you would miss if you were just like, you know, in an Uber and you were just like rolling by. When you're walking past places, you're able to stop and like actually look into stores and, you know, just take a slow approach. So for activities, I'm an activities person. For these vacations, I think I did maybe 2 or 3 activities per place and like tours. I use Viator to book my activities. So those are easy. Like, I feel like activities usually don't the price doesn't change, so you'll be able to book those in advance and you'll know what you'll be paying. It won't be like some crazy cost that you know you can't account for. So figure out which activities are like, those are your bucket list activities for that destination and you have to do it, and pick those, do those. Or if there's a lot of them, maybe pick a few, 1 to 2 of those bucket list items, and then everything else. I know that Viator also has some free things, or people have like tours that you can jump on for like low cost or no cost. In Madrid, I was able to find a free walking tour that was like donations to the tour guide, which was amazing. I think I found it through Viator, or I was just doing a search online and I found it. In the group, it was, I want to say like 10 of us per tour guide, and like we had a great time. So there's so many options. There's like paid options, and then obviously low cost and free options. So they are out there. You just have to research them. And then one thing you don't skimp on is your safety. So ensure that if you are alone, that you are paying for an accommodation that you feel safe in, and then you bring your safety items with you. Do never skimp on safety. If you feel like walking is not an option, take the cab. So just build that into your budget to ensure that you are safe. If you are with people, the same premise works, because you can be with a group of people and still be unsafe. So just ensure that everybody knows and is on board with, if things go left or we feel unsafe, that we're taking a cab. We're taking the safest route to wherever we need to go, and you are adjusting that way. And then work-life integration. So again, I said that I had all the PTO and I had the sick time and the holidays. When you are booking your trips, utilize holidays. So for me, I am utilizing that time to stretch out my vacation. So Memorial Day, Labor Day, whatever holidays you get off, utilize that time. I also never took off early on. I do now, but early on I never took off on like Christmas and New Year's, because I knew it was slow. So I saved all of those days to like roll over if I didn't use any for like the upcoming vacation at the beginning of the year, so that I didn't have to worry about, like, you know how sometimes jobs have like you have to accrue certain dates. So I used to just not use those dates. But again, do what works for you so that you can like be strategic and leverage the time and things that you have afforded to you with your job and just in your life in general. Also, definitely take advantage of like weekend trips, like Thursday to Monday situations, or when you have Fridays or long weekends. Utilize those things, and most times your employer lets you know when those things are happening, so you know. So I used to do a rundown of like looking at the upcoming year's calendar and figuring out like, okay, how does this work? Where can I fit this in? My birthday was a non-negotiable. It was just going to happen regardless, and they just knew I was never going to be at work. But doing that, you get to also save your PTO days just in case you need them for something else. Because for me, because we had so many, and I was also utilizing these strategies of using holidays and long weekends, I still had additional PTO that used to roll over. So I had those just in case there was an emergency, or if I just wanted to have a staycation. I just didn't want to be at work. Like, I still had additional days. And then when you are doing your PTO, batch it together where you already know the breakout of where you're going, and you're just like putting in those dates immediately, so you know that you have those dates to be approved for your vacations. Because I know we say PTO is we please alert the others, basically, because I'm going on this trip regardless. But the earlier you get in all your time, the better, so you don't have to really worry about anything. And then use remote work opportunities. Not everybody has the option for remote work, but if your job allows for you to work remote from anywhere in the world, you can probably utilize that to also extend your vacation. So that's an option. And then again, like I said earlier, planning your year so that you are planning in January, so that you are, preparing for the entire year. You're putting in your PTO at the beginning of the year, and you are doing savings. One other strategy that I used was, and this is a recent, especially with the whole Airbnb, Afterpay and Klarna and Affirm and all those things, I've been utilizing that lately so that I am breaking up my flight. So when I'm booking a flight, I would use like Afterpay or Klarna, book my flight, and I would book it on if it aligned also, but book it on a pay week, so that, or the week after a pay week, so that I had the money available, so that I can break it up in 4 payments. So over 2 months, I'm paying off my flight. So that was one thing that I didn't have to worry about, which was also outside of my travel budget. That was just like, okay, this is extra money. Well, not extra money, but an extra cost on top of what I was already putting away, to then just break up my flights, rather than, because sometimes you have, things that come up and you just have to just make it work. So that's something that I have been utilizing now, and it's great. Or I just put it on a credit card to get points, and then I just pay off the card. Do whatever works for you, because sometimes stuff happens and you just have to make do and just accommodate. So, in me saying all of that, I want to still again acknowledge that me saying all of this to you guys is from a place of me having a good salary, a good amount of PTO, no dependents, having access to my passport, and having that level of privilege. But I want to impress upon everyone that even if you don't have a high salary, you can still, if you want to go to an international vacation, you prioritize that. And if you can't go on an international vacation, maybe you don't go on vacation this year because you're going to save for the entire year into next year, and you do it for the following year. Or you want to do a big vacation, you travel, you save over multiple years, and instead you do smaller trips domestically, so that you get the feel of, having a vacation without it being an international vacation. But I also want to acknowledge that if you are going to the next state over, that can be considered a travel vacation. Like, I think this goes back to what I was saying about influencers and what you see online and how everybody has great pictures and it's just amazing. I think we also need to acknowledge that sometimes your vacation might just be to Arizona because Arizona is the antelope what's it called, the park is gorgeous and you want to go there. I know our flights domestically be absolutely outrageous. Side note, when I was in Europe, my flight from Porto to Madrid was $120 round trip. That is just to show the stark difference between us flying to, I know Miami sometimes is cheap, but like flying to Vegas might be $400, but I'm flying from one country to the next country and it's $100 in Europe. So I just wanted to just share that little tidbit. But again, travel is more accessible than you think. Sometimes it's domestic rather than international. Even if you don't have a passport, there's so many things to see in the United States, and I think a lot of us forget. And you know, if you're watching this and you are somewhere abroad, you can look at your country and say, what is there to see within my country that I've never seen? Because just the other day I was walking around the city and I'm just like, there's so many things that I've, not done in this city, and I've lived here my entire life. And I think that's something that happens with a lot of people. You live places and you say that you'll get to it, and sometimes that can be the priority that you have for yourself, that you're just taking the trip to the next state over, or the few states over, or then the next city over, state over for us, country over in Europe. So the options are endless. And for me, my sacrifice was that sometimes I wasn't splurging on the things that I wanted, but I was definitely privileged and grateful that I was able to go on vacations, because even though it's not something tangible, the impact is so great. So travel is near and dear to my heart, obviously, because I'm doing this series and I'm just talking about the things that I love in travel. But what you need to do is ask yourself, what do you need to shift to make travel a priority for you in your life, and how to make it possible. It's not can you afford it, it's how can you afford it and make it built in, is my key takeaway in everything that I said today. So your priorities are valid. If you can't do it now, don't just say it'll never happen. You reprioritize. If you're not able to put $200 aside for travel, put $50 aside. Just ensure that you are never not saving towards your dream to travel. But for me and you, I hope you guys make travel a priority and end up taking all of the trips of your dreams. And it doesn't need to be like me doing 4 trips a year, because this year I only ended up going on 2 trips this year, and that was because of familial priorities and financial priorities. But just adjust it to your life as life happens, because we can't foresee what's going to happen, so we just have to adjust as is. But again, like I was saying, prioritize travel in your life and you will always be able to take a trip and travel the world. So thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in episode 6. Have a good evening.